Lamar Waldron, speaking of untimely deaths, is on the line with us. He's an historian, an author. His most recent book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination, and co-author with me on two books that covered the JFK Assassination, Legacy of Secrecy and Ultimate Sacrifice. And the website, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination.com. Surprise, surprise, the title of the book, complete with the. So, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination.com. Lamar, it's great to have you back in the program. Welcome back.
Great to be with you again, Tom.
So, you have a new book out about the Kennedy assassination. Of course, this the 50th anniversary is coming up, Friday?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so let's just get into this. I mean, 50 years have passed. You've written two books about Kennedy's murder. There's probably 1,000 other ones out there in the marketplace. What new information do you have that's in your new book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination?
Well, we've got several things. Probably the most important thing is that we now have incredible details about exactly how JFK was killed, who was doing the actual shooting, where those people came from, and where they went to.
Okay, let's go through it. How was he killed? Who was doing the shooting? Where'd they come from?
Well, basically what we have now, let me kind of explain where this information came from, is in 1985, America's most powerful godfather was finally in federal prison. And that man's name was Carlos Marcello. And he was the godfather of Louisiana, most of Texas, the lower half of Mississippi, America's most powerful godfather for decades. And the Kennedys had been trying to put Marcello in prison for many, many years, until JFK died. Bobby even tried after JFK died. They were unsuccessful. By 1985, he was finally in federal prison thanks to an undercover FBI operation that came about under the Carter administration. And so he was in prison. And the FBI was able to get an FBI informant close to Marcello. In fact, very close to Marcello. They got this FBI informant in the prison cell with Carlos Marcello. They made him Carlos Marcello's roommate. And then they got a court authorization to put a bugged transistor radio in the jail cell. So every night, every morning, Marcello is in that cell, and he's talking to a man he thinks is his best friend by the name of Jack Van Lanningham. And Jack Van Lanningham was older than the average inmate. The average inmate was in their 20s. Marcello was 75. Jack Van Lanningham was in his 40s, I believe, at that time. And so because he was so close in age to Marcello, they had struck up a friendship even before they were cellmates. Mm-hmm. And you should understand, Jack Van Lanningham was not a criminal. He was not the typical man you would find in a federal prison. He was an ordinary family man, a successful businessman, in fact, who had literally had one bad day. And because of that one bad day, he had his troubled alcoholic wife had left him, and that sent Jack on a downward spiral. And so he went from being this successful businessman, family man. Long story short, he winds up in Tampa, no money, drinking heavily. One bad day, he tries to rob a bank with a bag of dirty laundry and a television remote control, saying it's a bomb and a detonator. Mm-hmm. Like you or I would if we committed a crime. He felt so guilty later on, he called up the FBI and said, I feel terrible about this. I'd like to turn myself in. And they said, we'd like that too. Why don't you, come right on in? I tell you what, why don't you stay there? We'll go pick you up and we'll take care of this.
Jack, by the way, I have to add, Jack is a very decent guy. I had lunch with him. I had dinner with him about 3 months ago in Los Angeles.
Right, and so again, it is important to understand he's
still alive,
a criminal guy, except for that one bad thing. But he wound up with an 8-year prison sentence. So he had no choice at all, but to help the FBI. That was the only way he was getting out of prison, in less than 2 years. So what he then did, he gets Marcello, talking about a wide variety of crimes, and I want to emphasize that this was a really extensive FBI undercover operation. It was codenamed Camtex, CAMTEX, And it would last for 2 years. Jack Van Lanningham would be part of it for a year. Like I said, they had the bug transistor radio. And Marcello made an outburst in the prison yard in front of Jack, whom he trusted, and another inmate who used to work for his brother, whom he trusted. And he just blurted out, and this has been in our previous book, Legacy of Secrecy, the one that Leonardo DiCaprio is turning into a movie with Robert De Niro. And Marcello said, I'm glad I had JFK killed. I wish I could have done it myself. Well, what's new in the book is a couple of days later, Jack was curious, as would you or I be. He's heard this confession out in the prison yard. By the way, that night that Marcello made the confession in the prison cell, and this would be on FBI undercover audio tape, should they ever decide to release it, Marcello did, nicely threaten Jack never to talk about what Marcello had blurted out in the prison yard about having killed JFK. Mm-hmm. But a couple of days later, Jack, very, very curious, he knows he can't ask Marcello directly, but he also knows Marcello well enough to know that Marcello hated the Kennedys, and all he had to do was get Marcello talking about the Kennedys again. And sure enough, Marcello, who now knows Jack knows that he had JFK killed, starts revealing more details. And Marcello goes into detail, and he talks about how he imported 2 hitmen from Europe to come to America through Canada into Michigan, where you used to live, Tom, from Michigan down to Louisiana, to this huge multi-thousand-acre estate that Marcello had outside of New Orleans, 10 days before the
Amazing. Hang on. Lamar Waldron is with us. His new book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of Lamar Waldron. We're about halfway through the fifth of the first question, but we'll get there.